Welcome back. Welcome back, and today we're going to talk about dollar retention rate versus net retention. And understanding the metrics will reveal the customer health, and we'll go into a lot more details in a few. But I'll start off with a small example. I was reviewing a SaaS company's metric for a potential investment by one of the investors. And the CEO had probably told him that our retention rate is 95% and our customers, they absolutely love us. So I kind of said, okay, that's great. Is that logo retention or dollar retention? And he paused and he said, wait a sec, what's the difference? And it turns out that 95% of the customers were staying, but those customers were spending less each year. So when I calculated the dollar retention, it was only 82%. They were keeping the customers, but losing revenue from them. Now, that company wasn't as healthy as the CEO thought, right? And he didn't even know because he was looking at the wrong metric. So here's the thing. There are several ways to measure retention and they all sound similar. People use the terms interchangeably sometimes. And they tell each of those metrics, they tell you different things about your business. So I'm Hendol. I've been a CFO for about over 25 years in the Valley. And today I want to break down the difference between the dollar retention ratio and the net retention ratio and why getting this right, it matters so much. So let's get into it. The basics is that we have to understand the logo versus a dollar. It's as simple as that. Logo retention versus dollar retention. Logo retention is sometimes called the customer retention rate, which basically means it measures how many customers you keep. If you started the year, let's say with 100 customers and you ended with 92, your logo retention is 92%. That means 8 customers left, right? It's simple and it's easy to understand, but logo retention, it treats all customers equally. A customer paying you $1,000 a year, it counts the same as a customer paying you $100,000 a year. You lose 10 small customers and one big one, your logo retention says you lost 11 customers, but the financial impact could be vastly different. So that's why we pull in this concept of dollar retention rate, which is a very valuable metric as well. What is the dollar retention rate? It simply measures how much revenue do you keep from your existing customer base. It looks at the actual dollars and not just a count of logos. So let's say you started the year with $10 million in revenue from 100 customers, and some customers left, and some customers, they downgraded. And at the end of the year, those same 100 customers, the ones you started with, are now paying you $8.5 million. So what happened? Your dollar retention rate now is 85%. You kept 85% of the revenue from your starting customer base. And this is sometimes also called the gross dollar retention or GDR. It tells you, ignoring any expansion, how much of my existing revenue did I keep? So the dollar retention is almost always more useful than the logo retention simply because it reflects the underlying economic reality. Losing a $100,000 customer, ouch, it hurts a lot more than losing a $1,000 customer, and the dollar retention simply captures that. Now, let me dig a little bit deeper into this gross dollar retention because it's an important concept. So what is the gross dollar retention? It measures how much of the revenue you retain from your existing customers. And you are excluding any expansion or you're excluding any of the upsell. It only counts what you kept from what you started with. So here's a formula. Take the revenue from your cohort of customers at the start of the period. Subtract any revenue that you have lost to churn. In other words, customers who left completely. Subtract any revenue lost to contraction, where customers who downgraded or reduced their spend. And then divide by your starting revenue. So if you started with $10 million and you lost, let's say, $800,000 to churn, and you lost another $400,000 to contraction, your ending retained revenue is going to be $8.8 million. So your gross dollar retention is 88%. So gross dollar retention can never be higher than 100%. You can only keep what you started with. You cannot add to it in this calculation. So what is a good GDR then? For a healthy SaaS business, you want GDR to be well above 90%. Best in class companies are at 95% or higher. Below 85%, you have a problem. you're losing too much revenue just to stay in place. So the GDR is a pure measure of customer satisfaction and product stickiness. It answers a basic question: are customers staying and continuing to pay what they were paying? And if your GDR is low, it means that your customers are leaving or shrinking. There is usually a sign of product market fit issues, competitive pressure, or customer success problems. So what do you need to do? You need to dig in a little bit more and understand why. Now let's talk about the net dollar retention. It's a little bit different, NDR. This is the metric that gets the most attention, especially from the investors. And what does that mean? It includes everything. Net dollar retention, it includes everything. It includes retention, contraction, churn, and expansion. It measures the total revenue impact of your existing customer base. That's simply put. So here's a formula. You take the starting revenue from your customer cohort. You take out the churn, you subtract the churn, you subtract the contraction, but you also add the expansion, the upsells, the cross-sells, the price increases, and you divide that by the starting revenue. So if you started with $10 million and you lost $800,000 to churn and you lost $400,000 to contraction, like before, but you added $2 million from expansion, your ending revenue from that cohort is $10.8 million. So your NDR is 108%. NDR can be above 100%, and that's the magic. If your NDR is over 100%, it means that your existing customers as a whole are spending more each year than they spent last year, even after accounting for the ones you left. And that is incredibly powerful. It means that you can grow even without acquiring new customers. Your existing base is expanding faster than it's shrinking. So what is a good NDR? For SaaS businesses, 100% is a baseline. You want to at least hold steady. Above 110% is good. Above 120 to 130% is excellent. And the best companies like Snowflake or Datadog, they have NDRs of 130 to 140% or higher. NDR below 100% means you're shrinking from your existing base. You need new customer acquisition just to stay flat. And that is a treadmill you don't want to be on. So why do both metrics, why do they matter? So here's the thing. You need both the GDR and the NDR, and they tell you two different things. The gross dollar retention, it tells you about the foundation. Are you keeping the customers? Is your core product sticky? If GDR is weak, your bucket has holes and no amount of expansion will fix that. The water, it'll keep leaking out. NDR also tells you about the growth engine. Are the customers expanding? Is your land and expand strategy, is it working? And a strong NDR means that your existing customers are a source of growth. It's not just maintenance. So let me give you some scenarios to illustrate. Scenario number one, GDR is 95%, NDR is 115%. This is the dream. You're keeping almost everyone, and the ones who are staying, they're buying more. So your existing customer base is growing nicely. On the other hand, scenario two, GDR is 85%, NDR is 110%. On the surface, the NDR is looking good, but look closer, you're losing 15% of your base revenue to churn and contraction. So you're papering over a retention problem with the expansion revenue, and that becomes risky in the long term. If expansion slows down, you are in big trouble. Now, if your scenario, let's talk about scenario three, GDR is 95 and NDR is 98%. You're keeping the customers, but they're not expanding. So there's no growth from the base. You're entirely dependent on new logos to grow. That is sustainable, but you're leaving money on the table. Imagine another scenario. GDR is 80%, NDR is 85%. Both the metrics are weak. Customers are leaving, and the ones who stay, they are not growing. This business has serious problems. You need to fix retention before you worry about anything else. So do you see how this whole thing looks? How you're looking at both metrics, which gives you the full picture? NDR alone can hide a retention problem. GDR alone can hide an expansion opportunity. So let me give you some practical advice on calculating and tracking these metrics. First, you need to define your cohort very clearly. Usually, you're looking at customers who are active at the start of a period, a quarter or a year. And everything is measured relative to that starting point. Second, be consistent about time periods. That's very important. Monthly retention compounds differently than annual retention. A 98% monthly GDR might sound great, but compounded over 12 months, that is only 78% annual GDR. Make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. Third, segment your retention metrics. Overall NDR might be 110%, but what is it by customer size, by industry, by product, by tenure? Often you'll find that expansion is concentrated in certain segments while others are flat or shrinking. And you know that insight, it helps you focus. It helps you focus where you're going to put your resources to optimize the NDR and the GDR. Fourth, track the cohorts over time. Don't just look at a blended number. Look at how the 2022 cohort is performing versus the 23, versus 24, 25. Are newer customers retaining better or worse? And that tells you if things are improving or are things declining. Understand the drivers is the fifth condition. If NDR changes, why does it change? Was it because of more churn, less expansion, price increases? Break it down and it helps you take the requisite action. Sixth, be careful with small sample sizes. If you only have 20 customers and one big customer churning or expanding, it can swing your metrics wildly. The metrics become more meaningful as your customer base grows. So, what are the key takeaways? Let me wrap up with 3 key points that you can gather from this session. Dollar retention is more meaningful than logo retention. It reflects the economic reality. Losing a big customer hurts more than losing a small one. So focus on the dollars. That's number 1. Number 2, GDR and NDR, they tell you 2 different things. GDR is measuring the foundation. Are you keeping what you have? But NDR, it measures a full picture. It includes expansion, and you need both to understand that, to get a better feel for what the customer health is. And number 3, a strong NDR can mask a weak GDR. If your expansion is papering over a churn problem, you are at big risk. Always look at both metrics together to get the true picture. I hope you found this session helpful, and the next session will be covering some other very interesting topics that will resonate well with you. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.